The views and opinions expressed by the guests of Sasquatch Experience do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the hosts, sponsors, or affiliates of the Sasquatch Experience. As always, listener discretion is advised.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Legend walk among us, lurking in the forests of our world.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my sensor light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. Looks like a man. I don't know what it was.
For over 15 years, we've talked with scientists, researchers, investigators, and witnesses, trying to gain insight and proof around the existence of this mysterious entity.
Jesus Christ, you better... Ted, Tia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Join us as we continue into the investigation of the Sasquatch Experience. And good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Sasquatch Experience. I'm Sean, the Fort Chop Forker. James Baker popping up there like an unwelcome direction. Matt Arner, Henry May, and you can't see him, but he's there. Vance Nesbitt, folks.
John Cena, special guest.
Oh, God. That's terrible. And go ahead, make your joke. You know, Henry with the shaved head. Come on, you said it right before we went on air. It was funny.
Preparation H over there.
Preparation H. Triple H, Preparation H. Anyhow, that's how this kicks off, guys. Right before we go on air, Baker gets his quips in, and then we get ready to unfocus as we try to bring you some great content. Tonight, guys, got a strange show for us. And not a strange show, really interesting show. One of our Patreons asked us to, there's Vance, asked us to discuss what happens to Bigfoot after they, become deceased, they pass away. And I thought, well, not something we ever talked about, I guess, in great lengths in the past. And as we start winding up the year, what better way to think about than death and, what comes after during the most magical time of the year. Mm-hmm. So I figured, well, let's talk about Bigfoot after death. And there's some very interesting points that we'll go over and some talking discussions. But first, had a good show last week, guys, with the Big Muddy Monster. Some good reception. Our social media folks, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, Sasquatch Experience, except for on X, which is at Sasquatch EXP, which you can find the links by going to our website, sasquatchexperience.com, or you can become a Patreon and support us for as little as $2 a month. That's right. Become a Patreon, support us for $2 a month. But aside from that shameless plug, YouTube, we're starting to get some comments on YouTube, and we the one comment that sticks out was a comment from a gentleman who will remain nameless. You can go on and see him. But it was one word, lies.
Gonna have to narrow that shit down.
Right.
Lies.
Well, commenter, thank you for the specificity of what lies we're talking about. But yeah, please be a little bit more defined about what you're asking us to clarify in terms of lies. Rather, you think the whole thing was a shenanigans and a hoax, but I assure you that there was no lies coming from our mouths intentionally, just reading the reports of folks that were there at the time and felt they needed to share this with the world. So lies, be a little bit more specific. Don't be a rube.
Bring it.
Just be clear. Bring it. Anyhow, that's all I wanted to say about that lies. But on that note, as I inappropriately and unprofessionally clear my throat, we got a good show, guys. And by the way, Spotify came out. As you see, all our podcast friends, they're posting their pictures and everything. We had a good year. And it's just getting better. And as I posted tonight on Facebook, that This show's for you, the listener. We enjoy doing it. It's a passion for us because we love the big hairy guy. But please take the time to like us, review us, give us it's important that you give us good feedback that's meaningful. I don't mean good that, oh, you like us, you love us. If there's not something we're doing right, let us know so we can try to fix it. And we do our best to bring you a high quality show. And sometimes we missed a mark, understandably so. We have issues and we're trying to work through them on the limited budget and time and the training we have, but we are getting better. And so give us that important feedback, that clear, concise feedback and fair feedback. And of course, we will modify and adjust as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Got a great article from Matt sending to me, which we'll definitely talk about when we get started. Guys, anything you want to touch on before we go off? We'll start at James, work around the clock. James, Matt, Henry, and then Vance.
No, I got nothing. I'm waiting for the subject because I have all kinds of things on that.
All right, Matt, go ahead. Anything for you?
Not really. I'm just gearing up for the holiday season, and we're going to have another weekend out in the woods coming up this weekend. So, I'll be out keeping my eyes open.
Henry, what do you got?
Well, I finished Matt Pruitt's book, The Phenomenal Sasquatch. I really liked it. A little bit on the dry side as far as sciencey stuff, but I enjoyed it. It was a good book, good read.
Yeah, The Phenomenal Sasquatch is a great book. It is a little scientific and wordy, but if you're someone that enjoys those things, like I think Matt and myself have a tendency to go on for those things, it's right up our alley. But Henry, you did give it a really good review. It's a great book, and folks should check it out. And Vance, anything for you?
My breast implants to represent Patty from the PG film has come out rather well, and I'm just kidding about all that. It's I want to dive into this topic.
Let it go, Vanessa.
Instilled upon all of us to talk about tonight, because I have a couple of points. If any of the other members of this squad here will not bring up, I would love to bring up.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, with that, we'll get started. Guys, tonight, talking about Bigfoot after death. I had to pause there because we didn't call it Where's the Bones. Where's the Bones is actually chapter 20 of John Green's book, Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us, where we talk about this. But James, go ahead. I'll let you get started because you're busted at the seams.
So we were kind of having a discussion. Someone had asked, where's the body? Why haven't we found one? Why would how would a 400 to 600 pound and, 200 to 600 pound animal just disappear? And I did a lot of reading on this, and I wanted to talk about I kind of have three theories on it. One of them will make people angry, and I'm okay with it. So I'll start with that one. It doesn't exist. Okay. 2 is it's highly intelligent. Or 3 is it's a animal and it eats its dead. We're going to really focus on 2 and 3, or we're going to focus on 2 and 3 more than we will on 1, because scientifically I couldn't prove any of the 3 options. So, but we have talked about many times about whether they're smart and they bury their dead or they whatever. Sure. And I know Sean has some information on that, so I won't take that away from him. But so I've been talking to DNR, the Pennsylvania Outdoors, and a variety of other ones. And a lot of them, like, you pick any animal out in the wild, they don't die of old age. It matters to where you are on the food chain, to how long you survive, and what happens to your body. So, for instance, a deer, in most cases, do not live, of old age. They get shot by a hunter or killed by a wolf or break their leg and rot, whatever. But they don't usually die of old age. A smaller animal, like a mouse, might get eaten by a bird. Variety of things. Okay, so they were talking about how wolves have a range of up to 200 miles sometimes. So if a wolf would say kill a deer, and let's say the deer weighed 100 pounds, when the wolf killed it, it would take it in the pack, or the single wolf would take it back to its wolflings. I guess pack is the best word I can think of at the moment.
I don't know. I'm kind of digging wolflings, but that's okay.
Wolflings. and it would take the body of what it wanted. Now, that body is laying there with what's left. Now, any other scavengers or even larger carnivores, like even bears, will take a chunk, because bears don't eat their meat as much. They put it in they put it in a location, and then they eat the bugs off it. So now you have a deer carcass that was, let's say, 100 pounds. Now it's about 40 pounds. Smaller animals will take what they want. The bugs will take what they want. But they say in general, matters how cold it is, how hot it is, where you live, humidities. There's a whole lot of really special math. And if you want to read the books, have at it. Okay. But
James, we sat through a presentation from Dr. John Mayanzinski about bears, which was very interesting, and just adding more credibility to what you were saying. Of when we were told that the bears don't eat the meat, they let it fester, and then they eat the maggots because they're easier for the bears to digest.
And lick the blood.
Little grotesque, I get it, but it's coming from a professional, folks. James and I just didn't make that up.
It was science, okay, from a scientist.
I didn't mean to step on
Science.
you, buddy. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. So you now have a smaller carcass, and now you have that carcass anywhere, in the next 150 to 100 miles is spread all over the place. They say the average body outside, without any kind of burial or anything like that, usually only lasts maybe, a week, and then you're down to bones. The bugs pick them clean. And the thing is if the body's spread over miles, you might not notice a full skeletal of something. You may just see a bone, or you may whatever. So as far as I think is, because if we believe that Bigfoot is truly alive and not a spiritual animal or fake, okay, then there's the potential of a 300 to 400 pound beast disappearing. Because how many deer, and Matt might have a better idea, or even being a hunter, how many deer die yearly that we didn't kill, but yet there's not deer carcasses from here to whatever? The carcass is just gone. Same with bears die. Now, like I said, the higher on the food chain, the older they will get. But like a deer would be, a deer dies, breaks its leg, and we'll say some wolves pick at it, and then coyotes pick at it, and then this picks at it, and the birds pick at it, and whatever. So within a week, it's down to bones, and the bugs are eating the bones. Mm-hmm. So a large body could disappear, and there's physical proof if you look in the animal kingdom.
Monster Quest did a whole episode on, I think it was the swamp creatures and how long it would last. Something would last out there. And they did time-lapse photography, and in no time, it went from being a full carcass to nothing. Right. Not even a grease spot.
We had the same situation, kind of. We had a little area we were planting strawberries to try to bait in animals. There was a dog that was dead. We didn't kill it. We're not creepers. Okay, whatever. It was maybe dead a week or two, and we weren't going to disturb it. We came back about 2 weeks later, and it was bones. Something was picking at it. So, I mean, the science is there of what could have happened to the body.
Yeah. So, I can tell you there's nothing more morbid than stumbling upon a dead dog for no explanation. Of all the things to find in the woods, that's just not right. A dog was definitely probably the most disturbing.
Well, we got followed by that white van. That was more disturbing. And then I was talking to Matt a little bit about how the police use pig carcasses to kind of get an idea of how bodies react to certain environments. So take it away, Matt.
Well, we have been using pig carcasses, and that's something that a lot of the forensic anthropologists will use. However, what we generally do is we have people that donate their bodies to science, and we have body farms. The three biggest body farms right now, there's one in Texas, that's the original. There's one in Tennessee, and there's also one in Florida. And the one in Texas is more, they have a varied habitat, but it's more that dry, arid environment. The one in Tennessee is more of a mountainous environment. And obviously the one that's in Florida, you have the higher humidity, you have the just the different organisms down there that will quickly take care of a body. So, like, if you look up any of the videos, they'll actually put fencing up around the bodies just so that they can see what happens to the body without it being disturbed by animals. Because when you do remove those fences, the animals will clear that area where the body is in a matter of days. There's one famous video I tried to find it. I couldn't get it in time, but there was actually a deer that was eating the bones from a human in one of the body farms. But the one thing is you're out in the yes, absolutely. The one thing is though is that we're out in the woods, and which is where we do a lot of our research. Something that lives out in the woods that absolutely thrives on bones is porcupines.
Yeah.
Porcupines will absolutely clear a skeleton in no time at all. So you do have creatures like that. Mice will feed on the hair. Yes, they will feed on the bones as well, but they're primarily going to go for the hair and other deposits from the body. And then of course you have the organisms like the maggots, which will just clean any tissue from a body from the inside out. They'll go into an orifice such as your eyes, mouth, rectum, and as soon as they lay some eggs, that's it.
Is it wrong?
Yeah. I had to bring that up.
Well, no, I mean, that's accurate because my friend is a taxidermist. He goes, they have boxes that they put the skulls in from the deer and whatever, and that box has these bugs in it, and in like a day and a half, that thing is cleaner of a wisp.
Yes. Yeah. And you can actually buy those beetles. They're a specific breed of beetles. You can buy them, I believe, on Amazon. You can actually get a box of these beetles, and if you have a skull, they will clean the all the tissue off and have that skull clean in literally 2 or 3 days.
Right.
So, but there are different stages when we go through, and when we look at the try to determine a time of death, where we look at how far has the person remained in rigor mortis? Is it now into a decomposition mode? How far into decomposition mode has it been? Has there been anything to affect the area where the crime scene where the body was? So there's all those factors that come into play with that, and we're talking about humans. But again, if we're talking about a large animal, we're going to use a lot of those same principles.
Vance, what do you have to add?
Here's what I have to add. I had an epiphany, if anybody knows the definition of epiphany. I happened to watch, I believe it was this past Sunday, Small Town Monsters revisiting the nesting site. And it went from the first visitation of the nesting site with Dr. Meldrum, and then the current, Eric Randalls and Sean Corson. And, they explained that this nesting site, a lot of the shrubbery and leaves were stripped from the trees and were, packed on the ground. I'm wondering, maybe that's not a nesting site. Maybe that's a grave. Because, Sean, I've seen you bury the bodies in the backyard, and you take a shovel and you take that shovel down all the dirt over the grave. All right? And
why does everybody blame me?
That's a possibility that is not necessarily a bedding site, but it could possibly be a grave where one has passed away, and we have learned through biology that there's several animals that experience remorse and sadness. The first thing I would bring up is the crow. The entire bird species of crow and raven, and is extremely as intelligent that they are. When their own has fallen, they gather around in trees above where the fallen has gone down at, And some of these crows have brought trinkets, whether it's broken glass or tinfoil, and they leave it by the body. And they hang there for a number of hours before they leave the area. They are giving a consent to one that has fallen. And elephants, we've all heard, the elephant graveyard. Yeah, that's kind of a wives' tale with the elephant graveyard, that they all travel to the same spot and they all die in the same spot. That's a wives' tale. But elephants and chimpanzees, primates, they grieve when they lose a significant mate or a young one. They do grieve. And it's clearly evident through biology to see that there's a grieving going on over a dead carcass. Now, if you have a bipedal creature, which I believe that there is, and it grieves also, it may have the intelligence to bury its loved one or a cohort amongst the family, whatever it is, and bury it, and then pack it down to the ground. And when I watched that Small Town Monsters, revisiting the nest site, wondering maybe there's a possibility that's actually a grave, not necessarily a place for the sleep.
That's fascinating. Now, before we go ahead, Matt, and then I want to jump into this article.
Yeah, really quick. I also watched that too, and Eli and the Olympic Project people. I mean, they did a fantastic job with that, and I'm looking forward to the second part. So hopefully they can get that going for us. But anyways, one thing that I would suggest is taking, and you can get it, you can bring them more into the backcountry now. It's not like it was 20 years ago, but ground penetrating radar. And if you're able to find a depression, if you're able to find a hollowed area underneath those nests, I think your hypothesis, it could be correct. And it's definitely worth it to. I did see that they did dig through those, but if you're talking about something that maybe it dug down about 3-4 feet, what happens is once your body's going to be covered by the dirt, and then as it decomposes, you're actually going to have almost like a depression there from where that body was. Right. Eventually, it's going to go to bone, but at some point, you're always going to have that. Even if it collapses, you're still going to have that small amount of basically open space, a void that would match up to
like how fossils are created.
Similar, very similar to that. So, if the Olympic Project, if they're able to get a ground penetrating radar up to those sites to see if there's something underneath, that may be very fruitful. And like I said, nowadays there's units that they could get that they would be able to bring into the backcountry. But 10 years ago, back in 2014, when they found the first ones, we were still using the ones that looked like lawnmowers. So.
That's just very really true, Matt, and that's a good point. However, penetrating radar, that's not $1.50 to go to Lowe's and go buy one.
Yeah,
they've got backers. They've got backers.
Yes. I don't know that these guys are going to be able to afford to buy one and bring it there just for that one specific research. However, it's a possibility if you dig into the ground, you might be able to find something. Yeah. I don't know. To haul one of those things out there with them, it's not as easy as it was done in Jurassic Park to find the Velociraptor and say, "Oh, look." No, it's not. It's a high process. I don't want to see these guys be spending money on something that I just came up with a hypothesis on. But it's possible, I guess. I don't know.
You don't know till you try. You don't know till you try. But as we're still on this topic, before we go to our break, I want to get through this article, a very timely article today posted by Lon Strickler. And it was just, it's kismet, because we're talking about, the Bigfoot, what happens after they pass away. We got an article today dated December 4th, 2023 over at phantomsandmonsters.com. Did Faro Lake, New York resident witness a Sasquatch burial ritual? I got Lon's permission to read this. I'm going to read it verbatim. The following email was quite strange, and I felt at the time needed further investigation. The email was written as a draft, including an outline that was added with other notations. It was an odd format, but the information was verified when I contacted the submitter. I was asked to write the commentary since they felt that they were not able to compose a story that would be understood by the readers. I forwarded a copy of my final composition to DD, which was approved. I inquired about the witness's, the cousin, willingness to be interviewed, but the notation was rebuffed since the information was sent to me was done so without the knowledge of the witness. All specific personal location and disclosure was agreed to be kept in confidence, but here's a transcript. During the holidays, Christmas 2010, I was able to talk to a cousin who lives in the Faro Lake area in New York. He is a conservationist and an advocate for nature conservation. He recently made a discovery that is fascinating but pains him since the information would most likely lead to Bigfoot hunters decimating wildlife in pristine forests. While hiking and camping in a fairly remote forest in Essex County, New York, the most specific location he'll give, he came across what he describes as a Sasquatch ritual burial. One evening, while he was making his way back to camp, he heard muffled grunting coming from his right. His attention was directed towards a thick stand of sugar maple trees. He crouched down behind a large fallen tree and witnessed 3 large, hairy bipedal figures. Sasquatch standing around a large tree stump. It looked like a large female who towered above her companions. He estimated that she was 8 foot plus and that the others were about 5 to 6 feet tall. Each one of the figures was swaying and grunting. This activity continued for almost 10 minutes when they suddenly stopped and started to run in the opposite direction. He was fearful that they had noticed his presence somehow. Since it was now getting dark, he decided to continue to his camp and return the next day. The next morning, he anxiously made his way back to the site where he had seen the Sasquatch. When he reached the site, he noticed a 4-foot-high hollow sugar maple stump with 4 gray squirrel tails attached to the top edge and suspended outside the stump. It looked like a sort of decoration. He also noticed a terrible stench that reminded him of very strong urine. He looked into the stump. It was empty, but there was some dark fur, a few bloodstains, and a large piece of old deer hide. He surmises that the Sasquatch may have buried a small child or infant in the stump and that they either came back to move it after noticing him or that a scavenger took it during the night. Do you believe that this could have been a Sasquatch funeral or ritual burial? DD. And the final note is, when I originally posted this commentary, I received responses from several doubters, but no one was able to offer an alternative reason for the actions of these Sasquatch. Is it possible that Sasquatch conducts spiritual rituals? And, and again, so we go to, kind of an amalgamation of some of the things we've talked about tonight. Baker, what's their intelligence levels? Does nature take care of their own? Is there some sort of ritualistic? And why not? If they're more people-like, as folks claim, they have an intelligence like man, why would they not have their own ritual? Jamie King posts, wonder if they utilize a morning shelter similar to indigenous tribes to mark or the area as sacred ground. And kind of what that person witnessed. And I know we could take that report and we could laugh it off and, mark it as silly. But the thing is, it's very specific. And I've not seen or heard of a lot of reports like that ever.
Right.
And so imagine the rarity of observing a Sasquatch to begin with. But now you've not only seen one, you've seen 3, and you may have seen some sort of ritual. I don't know if I'd have the balls to report that to anybody, to be honest with you. Thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Very true. Well, when these reports of researchers that go on in the field and they say, hey, there's tree branches made into an X, maybe the X is representing a spot where one has fallen. Again, it's just speculation. But maybe one has fallen in that area, and that's their recognition to stay out of that area to give respect where one has fallen and has been buried.
Well, I'm still kind of on your nesting site hypotheses, because to me, that's not something that had occurred to me ever. until you just
Mhm.
brought that up. That's pretty
Right.
fascinating.
Right.
Folks, we're going to take a quick break here. It's 9:32, a little late in the news. When we come back, we'll carry on with this conversation. I'm Sean Forker. He's James Baker. That's Matt Arner, Vance Nesbitt, and Preparation H, Henry May down there in the corner. Thank you, James, for that new nickname. And we'll be right back. Folks. Take a moment, enjoy it, smoke them if you got them. We'll be back in a second.
News team, assemble!
Wait, what now? It's the bottom of the hour? Well, I better get prepared then. Pull out some papers and read some stuff. There it is. There's your paper sound effect. Oh, welcome to this edition of The Big Distraction, Bigfoot Bullhorn, exclusively on the Sasquatch Experience.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
Great. Anyway, we are in the descent of the dark season, while simultaneously holding hands with the holiday season. Imagine how much we would save on electricity bills if Christmas was in the summertime. You wouldn't even have to turn your lights on until like 9 p.m. Turn them off at, I don't know, 3 in the morning when it starts getting light out. I don't know why I'm laughing. I've lost my mind. I'm sorry, but we are quickly heading into the holiday season, like I said. And is it Christmas Yeti? Speaking of Yeti, a search for Yeti ended in October with the discovery of a single strand of hair. A BBC Radio 4 program covering the Himalayan hunt has revealed. Andrew Benfield, a writer and meditation teacher, has spent years looking for Yeti with his skeptical friend and political analyst, Richard Horsey. I'm sorry. The pair traveled through India, Myanmar, Nepal, and Bhutan. I don't know how you pronounce that properly, but Bhutan. Listening to stories about the legendary creature and eventually making, I'm doing air quotes right now, Yeti, a BBC Radio 4 series about their search. The series did finish on a cliffhanger back in June, a mysterious hair supplied by an unnamed source awaiting DNA analysis. And that was published October 20th, has now revealed the hair came from a horse. Well, of course, because your partner is named Horsey. Now, Benfield told Live Science, which happens to be an online science news site, the result didn't feel good. After 3 years of searching, a horse was about as boring as we could get, Benfield said. But the DNA analysis doesn't invalidate the series or the stories of people they spoke to, according to the pair. A pair of what? So, to wrap up, tales of an ape-like creature roaming the Himalayas date back centuries. Western interest in the Yeti or abominable snowman took off in the early 1950s after British mountaineer Eric Shipton returned from Everest with photos of giant footprints. Subsequent investigations led by Westerners failed to find any scientific evidence of the creature's existence. When we come back, hey, Ohio's got something going on.
You're listening to the Sasquatch Experience.
This portion of the show is being brought to you by Ed's Almost Good Beer. Remember, Ed's Almost Good Beer was brewed in God's country when God wasn't looking.
We take you back now to the auditions for Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay, people, today we're auditioning the part of Captain Picard. Please read the line in the script. The guy in the bow tie?
I'm Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the Enterprise.
Thank you. You, sir. Next guy.
I am Jean-Luc Picard.
Thank you. Okay, you, sir. Bald guy?
I'm Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the Enterprise.
Bald guy?
Yes?
Do you get airsick at warp speed?
Star Trek: The Next Generation. One hip starship. Weeknights at 7 on Channel 6.
Ohio, which is funny. I always thought it was pronounced Idaho. The Ohio Bigfoot Conference begins on Saturday, Star Wars Day, May 4th, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. This year's guest will be Matt Pruitt, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Doug Hychek, Darby Orcutt, Cliff Barrickman, and Adam Davies. Now, if you visit the OhioBigfootConference.org page or their Facebook page, there has been a date change on VIP ticket sales. They have been rescheduled to start selling on Saturday, December 9th, due to a PayPal conflict and issue, apparently. But the Ohio Bigfoot Conference 2024, the annual conference, takes place again, like I said, on Saturday, May 4th, 2024 at the Salt Fork Lodge and Conference Center at Salt Fork State Park in Cambridge, Ohio. Thanks again for listening to this edition of the Bigfoot Bullhorn, exclusively on the Sasquatch Experience. And as always, y'all good be doing it, or good be doing, wait, no, that ain't it. It's keep your toes in the mud.
Well, thanks, Vance, for that wonderful segment. We'll keep our toes in the mud. I'm due for a pedicure anyhow here soon, so.
Yeah.
Don't knock it, guys. Foot hygiene is important.
Yes, it is.
The good health, good foot health is important to your overall health.
Especially if you're a hiker.
Right. Prevent those infections. Keep them clean. Get them taken care of. Pamper yourself a little bit. Take care of those puppies. You can't hike without feet. Well, you can. You get one of those all-terrain rascals or those, just more difficult to do it without legs. So.
Get a Sherpa.
Sherpa.
Get a Sherpa. Just put them in a backpack like Yoda. Carry them around. Even without legs, I would still be a hell of a haul for somebody. So.
I'm 250 pounds. There's no try, mother.
Anyhow, we digress as always. So before we went to the break, we were talking about that ritual that was observed by the hiker up in upstate New York, or Essex County, New York. And just something very fascinating about that. But we're going to segue that into something pretty interesting that Matt discovered and brought up. So Matt, I'll give it to you to take us into the next segment.
Oh, thank you. The April 8th, 2019 Smithsonian Magazine talks about an article with gorillas that appear to grieve for their dead.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're looking at a Sasquatch as an ape, we're probably going to put them right along the lines of a gorilla. Or we're going to say that a lot of their behaviors could be similar to them. And one fascinating observation that they made was they had a pair of dominant males that had passed away a year from each other. And this was actually in Rwanda. So it wasn't in a zoo. This was out in the wild. And they observed what the tribe of the gorillas did when these two males passed. The first one, what they noticed was that the pack members would gather around the bodies and they would touch the body, they would groom the body. They found that especially with the females were very strong with whether it was a male or a female, that they would actually groom it. So they're cleaning the hair, they're taking bugs off, and they would have an interaction with the body for at least 2 or 3 days post death. What they did find, was that there were some males. They would sometimes, follow along with the females, but there was other times that they would become antagonistic towards the bodies. They would do chest beating, they would vocalize, or they may hit or kick the corpse. So you do have that where they're still thinking that that there could be some sort of pack structure amongst them, and that's their way of basically, establishing that that dominant male is no longer the dominant creature, even as he passed. But they did see that there was other juvenile males, particularly, that would spend some time with the deceased dominant males. They may actually go into the same nest as that dominant male as it lay deceased. So there's a lot of similarities, I think, with mammals in general, where they do, especially at a higher intelligence, they do seem to have a grieving process that they go through. So, but again, that's Smithsonian Magazine. It's Gorillas Appear to Grieve for Their Dead. Google it. It's a great article to read, and it falls right in line with what we're discussing.
I'll post the links to all our articles in the show notes so folks have them. Been doing that lately to give our folks where we're getting our information from. It's really important, I think, that we cite the, folks can get out there and read it and make up their own minds on these topics that we're talking about. But we're doing our due diligence and trying to provide you guys with some sources, and do with that as you wish. Henry, what do you got for us? You've been awful silent on the topic of Bigfoot after death.
One thing that we find, sometimes we can find interesting, is the reports we hear about of Sasquatch being seen near graveyards, cemeteries. Now, you wonder, what's the significance of that? Why are they there at a cemetery? Are they observing humans the way they grieve? It makes me wonder about that.
It's an interesting, observation, Henry. And again, something that's not often been talked about. Do they, in their ever-ending observations of us, as we notice these things seem to be curious about what we do, have they adapted any of their techniques to what we do? If it's a highly evolved, smart creature, have they observed how we handle our dead? We've been burying bodies since the Neanderthals, right? So, how have these things maybe adapted and learned over the years? And, that's a great point, Henry. A lot of these, there have been a decent amount of sightings notated around cemeteries. The whole grieving process, as we go back to that article, which, again, is one of the first articles I'm aware of, or reports of actually witnessing some sort of ceremony, which is still kind of gobsmacking to me a little bit. I just read that today and I got all giddy about it because of, the show tonight, but it's new information. And if it's exciting to me, I'm sure it's going to be exciting, just as Vance's epiphany that the nesting site may not be a nesting site at all, but a burial site. I was going back and I have the old iPad mini here, which is one of the best e-readers. You can go get yourself one of them. But Sasquatch Apes Among Us available in ebook. I have 2 physical copies and 1 portable take with me everywhere I go. Again, I mentioned it very briefly at the beginning of the show, chapter 20, page 366, where are the bones? This question has gone back since we started looking for this thing. What happens to these? What happens to the bodies? And that's not the first time it's ever been brought up. And John talks about it in that chapter. I'm not going to read the chapter line and verse, but, we often talk about institutions that have there been bodies found and have their bones been sent to institutions. We've heard about stories with the Smithsonian and giant bones, or, giant bones that have gone missing from all these institutions. But to surmise what John says is that he finds it hard to believe that in every instance that, he's asked institutions about these bones, they've not had any.
Right.
That they were sent to have disappeared.
Right.
Like, so to his point that it's not that they not that they disappeared, but they were never received to begin with. There's probably just more wise tales spun by researchers out there, which kind of goes back to James Baker's original point. Doesn't exist. And that would really suck, considering that,
but
tens of thousands of people have seen this thing.
To the point that Matt brought up, porcupine. Porcupine is one of the most prevalent mammals that completely will devour any kind of calcium-based bone, and they will completely devour it. That's what they do, and they do it for a nutritional reason. And every species, it seems like, from maggots and worms and bacteria, will completely decompose a body within a very short period of time. And when I say short period of time, I'm talking within a 7-day period, and there's no trace of that body left anymore. But porcupine pick up on that, and they completely go after the calcium, and they will devour the bone.
Think of bears.
As crazy as that may seem, but that's what they do. So each individual organism has its own structure and its own direction in order to bring back a decomposed or a dead entity back to the earth again.
Okay.
It's, the circle of life. Let's go back to the Lion King, but it's a circle of life. Every individual property and its own instruction on what it's supposed to do with the deceased.
Vance, you ought to run for Senate. Where's James Baker? Okay, we hit the mute button. Anyhow, what I was going to say, moving
for
past
train engineer.
Talking about driving a point, Vance, you could mow a point down and kill 100 people with it. Anyhow, what I was saying is, as Baker's, riding the choo-choo there, think of bears, one of the largest mammals we have in the forests of North America. How many bears have you stumbled upon dead in the woods?
None.
I've never stumbled upon a dead one. Now, in my research, I've seen a couple photos of people that have posted them, and I've never said they didn't exist. I've seen more bear dead along the highway than one I have alive in the woods, for one, and two, more than I've ever seen dead in the woods. And they're a large mammal. And so, what do bears do when they die?
Generally, what any sort of wild animal like that, they're going to find the most remote, hidden spot, and they're just going to, find a place, whether it's an old den or just a ravine somewhere, and they're going to. And again, the article from the Smithsonian does touch upon this, where some of the gorillas that knew that they were dying, they would walk away from the pack. So eventually they're going to find that place where they can just find comfort, and then that's it. So that's something that, again, and that's an excellent point. There's 18,000 bears as of the last count estimate for Pennsylvania. There's 25,000 plus coyotes in Pennsylvania. And these are two larger, won't really call them apex predators, but they're at the top. They're predators. And they're, again, I spend a lot of time out in the woods. I have yet to find a deceased bear.
Right.
That's a natural death. I've yet to find a coyote that has died a natural death. We see them, if they've been shot or they get hit by a car, but if they're dying from a natural death, you don't find those bones. You don't find that body anywhere.
Right.
So
now couple that, Matt, with the fact that most people doing this research, most people, there are exceptions, aren't going miles upon miles upon miles into the woods. We kind of have our range that we go to for comfort, and we kind of habituize a place ourselves that we go to, get used to, so we can notice if there's any abnormalities. But above and beyond that, how often do we go in? I'm not talking about your Appalachian trail hikers, because even that's a trail, a trail. How far are we venturing into the no zones, the remote zones, to look for this stuff? We're not. We're not going 10, 15, 20, 25 miles into the wilderness. That's a hell of a hike back. And, if people are going out there, they ain't coming back too often. So, something to be said about that too. So if this thing is not much different than any other mammals that, we've talked about, or any other, maybe like the bear and other mammals, it ventures off into the wilderness and does its thing. Maybe they get buried.
I've heard a series and have read. I've not only heard, but I have read a series of reports of domestic house cats that are both indoor and outdoor. And when an elder cat is not well, it wanders off. And it wanders off to a point where it's going to die. And it's not to be seen again. And then the posters go up, hey, missing cat. And it's quite possible that these creatures understand that its demise is prevalent, and it's just going to go to its point where it needs to die. And I don't know. I always say I don't know because I don't know. I want to know, but I really don't know.
There's one more mystery on this, fascinating subject. Guys, any final thoughts you want to drive home on this?
Well,
I wanted to bring up.
Matt, go ahead, and then Baker will hit you after that.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to bring up, you had touched upon the body, maybe bones being found, the Smithsonian. One person I follow on Facebook who is, he's kind of a good all-around researcher. He does his homework, and he's also out in the field quite a bit, is Les Odell down in West Virginia. And recently, he's been posting a lot of these old newspaper articles from papers primarily in the East Coast, where they talked about wild man encounters. But the one that he posted recently was about finding bones. These 7-foot bones that had different skulls than what normal humans would have. They were found near the mounds in Ohio, and those bones had disappeared. And again, this is something that he found in a newspaper probably from the turn of the 20th century, that he was able to grab that and post that. There's a lot of stuff that's in these old newspapers that may have our answers, and it's people like Les, Henry, some of the other people that are doing that really deep research into the historical side that may be able to help us find the answer.
Go ahead, Bake.
Well, you brought up a point about the Neanderthals used to bury their dead, and I kind of posted a thing about why we bury our dead, even as the beginning was. A lot of it was because it was unsanitary to the areas that you lived in, and because you didn't want to watch your relatives decompose, and your feelings that you had towards them. But the other thing, so if an animal that's intelligent, even on a Neanderthal level, it would feel the same way. Hey, I don't want Pappy dead in the cave for the next 15 years. I got to look at that. So, but we want to put it away from the water source, and we want to put it away from this. The other thing is with like I said, is like a lot of the stuff that goes on once you die, and if you would die in the woods from an animal attack or something or whatever, is a lot of times like your body gets scattered to a point. But even if we found the skeletal structure, kind of like what Matt was talking about, is where would you take it? Because a lot of people wouldn't believe you. I always remember the movie Gargoyles. I don't know if you guys remember. It was 1970s, 1980s. Great movie. But like the old man, the drunk old guy that runs the weird little shack had a gargoyle, a whole thing. And he's like, and he had the Indian legends, and he had the whole thing. And he was completely right. But he was a drunk old guy. The guy's like, you just sewed this together. Look, this is from a blood. You go, no. It's real. I'm sorry. I just don't present well. And that's the problem is if you found a Sasquatch, and we touched on this weeks ago, is if you found a Sasquatch body, what's step 2? Because if something buried it, then something's kind of watching it too. Like you don't bury Grandpa in the cemetery and then forget he was there, or you look at the paper every so often, and if you notice somebody's robbing graves, you might check.
Right.
So I mean, like it's something to think about. Is what is step 2 if you found the body?
And we'll go back and listen to that episode, folks. You're walking in the woods is the title of that one. Guys, we're at that time again already. 2 minutes of the show left, folks. If you want to report your sighting to us, you can do so confidentially, 570-940-9411, or you can email us info@sasquatchexperience.com. We do keep it confidential. We do collect them. I will ask you if you mind if we read it on the show. You don't have to say yes, but, I think a fellow Fortean researcher, Ashley Hilt, made a post the other day that the only thing worse than being put in a box because people think you're just a solo researcher on one topic is that when they find out you're a podcaster and you just podcast, like, no, some of us are researchers. We research, right? And I think that, to stay true to the core, Matt and I specifically, get out there and follow up on these investigations. So report them to us. If you're not local, guess what? We got friends and we'll help you out. 570-940-9411 or email us info@sasquatchexperience.com. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram at Sasquatch Experience, Twitter, formerly X, formerly known as Twitter, Sasquatch EXP, and find us all on our various social medias by going to our website, sasquatchexperience.com. You can click on shop to buy our stuff. We got some t-shirts and hoodies, and you can click on about us to learn about each and every one of your beautiful faces you see here on that screen. And folks, Henry down there in the corner, he's single and he's looking for a fifth, quoting Jamie Baker. So there you have it, guys. It's a great show tonight. We only, again, sometimes I feel like an hour is not enough, but it's what we got. So we have to dive into these topics further on down the road, but some great conversation tonight, guys. And like I said, all the material you shared with us, I'll put it in the show notes for the podcast uploading here very soon. Two. You can join us on our Patreon, patreon.com/Sasquatch Experience for as little as $2 a month. We got some great things coming your way. More Cryptic Wilderness coming as Matt and I get out to film some. We've got our holiday Bigfoot watch along that we got to do yet. We got all kinds of things coming, so stay tuned for that. The Facebook is the best way to keep up on what we're doing. Folks, that's all I got. I'm Sean Forker. You've been watching Sasquatch Experience. Henry, take them away with those dulcet tones.
Y'all be good or be good at it.
And we'll see you next week, folks. Good night, everybody. Keep on squatching.
You've been listening to Sasquatch Experience. Please rate and review wherever this podcast is consumed. To share your experience, visit us on Facebook or email us, squatchexperience@gmail.com. Keep on squatching.